All right, our next step is going to be to assemble our self-supporting cage system. Now, many people, when they've used container gardening before, they've had to build external trellises or other kinds of support systems to support the fruit as it grows. What I've come up with is an approach that is self-contained within the earthtainer itself. There's no staking systems. I'm sure you've all had experience in the middle of summer with the wet soil. The stake comes loose and falls, the plant falls over and so on. Doesn't happen with this type of system. There are no stakes or anything of that nature because these legs are going to form the base to hold up the weight of the fruit. So what we're going to use to begin our anchoring process together is a 1/8 inch wire rope clip, as it's called in the trade. And it simply is kind of a turnbuckle device that will clamp these two hoop sets together here. We've used a cage that has 4 hoop sets, 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'm going to do the clamping at hoop set number 3 here because this best then accommodates the width of our 31-gallon Rubbermaid container.
And Ray, you pointed out to me earlier that you want to line these up so they're as parallel as possible.
That's right. If you look down this plane here, think of it as like a rifle scope. You want to get these legs as aligned as possible because this is going to form the structural rigidity for the cage system when we mount it into the earthtainer base. So what we'll do now is just insert the wire rope clip around hoop set number 3 here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just use a socket wrench here to tighten this down. We've secured the 2 cages together at hoop set 3 with our wire rope clip, but what I want to do is add some additional rigidity up at the top hoop set 4 here. So we'll use commonly available wire rope or tie wrap clips, I think they're called. And these just ratchet down and you just pull them securely.
Or zip ties.
Zip tie, there you go. Just clip off the excess amount here. And we've got a cage system that is self-supporting and fairly rigid at this point in time. The next step, we're going to add on our black plastic mulch or moisture barrier. With the green theme of the earthtainer and trying to conserve as much water as possible, we're going to use a moisture barrier on top of the earthtainer to eliminate or minimize at least evaporation of the water. What I'm using here is a 30-gallon black trash bag that is readily available, and I've slit it in half so I can make 2 moisture barriers per trash bag. Gary, if you'd help me spread that out here. So next we're going to lift the tomato cage system onto the moisture barrier here and install it. So Gary, if you'd help me pick up that side there. And again, what we want to do is just kind of center the legs back to you a little bit. Okay. So we've got the legs pretty centered. It's important also to keep these legs as vertical as possible in this next step because we'll be sliding the bag up onto here. So very simply, you just take your fingers underneath there and kind of hold the cage down and pop it up. You can hear it pop a little bit. There you go. Do it on each of the 8 legs. All right, and then we'll just simply slide this up and just kind of wrap it over into here underneath. Here's a couple of clothespins. Well, I'll use just a couple of clothespins here to secure it and keep it out of our way for the time being. Step will be to take the lid and we are going to use this to secure the moisture barrier onto the container. So what I've done is just taken this lid and cut out around the edge, again with either a saber saw or with a pair of garden shears. And this is the final product here, the cutout surface. We'll take this lid and we will insert it and make sure you've got it in the correct direction of the bottom of the lid facing up. we'll insert it down over the wire hoops here, and you can pull it down, the first one, and to get it out of the way, go ahead, pull it down below that one. I just put it down to here, and it'll stay right in place until we need it in the final assembly stage. Our next step will be to mark the mounting locations for the collar support where the tomato cage will then rest on the aeration bench. So for this step, we're going to want to flip this back over onto the ground here. Our goal is to keep the assembled system in vertical plane as best as possible. So that's why it's very important to have very accurate measurements of where you're placing the support collars. If one is longer than the other, the tomato cage system itself would tend to tip one way or the other. So be very precise when you're performing this step. Again, we'll be using the 1/8 inch wire rope clips, which is the same clip that we use to attach the tomato cage system together at hoop set number 3. So Gary, if you could maybe help me, what we're going to do is just slide the clip down over to where you can just see the mark on the top that we've just made at 1 inch. And you can just hand tighten those for the moment. Okay, so that's finished. Our next step will be to install fender washers. Now, it's important to distribute the force that is being applied onto the aeration bench by the weight of the tomatoes. You want to spread out that weight. And these clips are relatively small surface area. So you want to broaden that area. So Gary, if you could take these and put on, we just want to drop those onto the top here. And this will have the effect of spreading that pressure across a wider surface area on the aeration bench. Now our next step, and this is where two people really come in handy, is to insert the aeration bench onto these metal legs here. So Gary, if you would hold that, and remember the outer holes that we drilled before, what we'll do is just find those holes and just push it right through the hole. There you go. Okay. Now we push it through this hole. Okay. Our next step is to secure the legs of the tomato cage on the underside of the aeration bench. This is important so that the tomato cage won't tip over when it gets loaded up with fruit. So out of the 8 legs of the cage that have come through, we're going to install the clamps on 6 of those. The 4 outer ones, and then diagonally 2 in the center. Here. And you can see the clamps right here. Now earlier on, we made a mark of 5 inches up from the bottom of the container, and this is going to be our overflow hole. So Gary, if you press down on the aeration bench, I'm simply going to take a 3/8 inch drill and punch through the outer container as well as the aeration bench. Let's spin it around and do the same over here. Our next step will be to drill a hole up 5.5 inches that we marked, and this is going to be used to secure the aeration bench to the outer container to provide rigidity to hold the cage system together. A 1/2 inch drill to make the hole larger to accommodate the anchor bolt. Okay, spin that around. Our next step is to secure the aeration bench to the main container. And for that, we're going to use a commonly available toggle bolt. It is a 3/16 inch by 2 inch device. The reason we're doing that is that while we have about 60 pounds of potting mix holding down the aeration bench when it is moistened, there is another 8 to 10 gallons of water, which is approximately 60 to 80 pounds of water in the reservoir. And what we want to do is tightly link the aeration bench to the container itself to take advantage of the mass of that water. So we'll take our toggle bolt, insert it into our 1/2 inch drilled hole, and then we will just simply screw that in place. Now when you're tightening that bolt, you don't want to over tighten it because the bolt edges could cut into the plastic. You just want to secure that until you heard it just snug up. Okay, we're now finished with the construction phase of the earthTainer. We've assembled the tomato cage system together with a wire rope clip, installed our black plastic mulch and moisture barrier. We've anchored it onto the aeration bench, and we've secured the aeration bench and the outer container together. So our next step will be to fill it with potting mix and do some planting. Pretty easy construction, isn't it, Gary?
Sounds good to me. It was only done in about, what, 4 seconds?
Something like that.